Welcome to Mastering the Attention Economy podcast. I'm your host, Ari Lewis. Twice a week, we interview entrepreneurs, executives, and industry leaders on how to break through the noise and capture the audience's attention. Today's guest is John Yedinek. John is the president and co-founder of Aging Media, the leading business-to-business media company covering the $7.6 trillion business of aging services and care.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so John, I discovered you through Twitter, and you wrote this great piece on, the vertical media landscape on Medium, which for those listening and those watching on YouTube, I'll share a link. But let's start there. Can you talk about sort of your thesis behind vertical media and how it led you to founding Aging Media?
Yeah, no, I mean, I wish I could say that, I had this grand idea in mind when we started Aging Media, but, it came from a much simpler place. But the reason that I think we see so much opportunity in vertical media is that it's kind of the one area where I don't think a lot of, at least media and publishers, have explored deep enough to really see the value in it, where everybody was chasing scale and chasing more and more eyeballs, where what we learned early on was that it's not always about the size of your audience, it's about the quality of your audience. And so the more that you go vertical, I think you automatically find people that are more interested in your content, that are more engaged, rather than just the passerbyers that I think you end up getting when you're chasing just massive amounts of page views. And so when we started Aging Media, we didn't have any money. We couldn't really go after these massive audiences. And so we had to have a different approach. And so we started to focus on these, I don't like to use the term niche because I think it makes it seem small, but we obviously focus on aging, which is an $8 trillion industry. And each of our verticals can be anywhere from 20 billion to, probably I'd say upwards of a $200 billion industry. And so what we've done is we start to really we try and find the highest quality list of people, or build a high quality list, not necessarily slowly, but a high quality list of people that are really influencing the industries that we cover. And to do that, you need exclusive content and content that's not out there. And so we create exclusive insights and analysis that people can't find anywhere else. And you start to attract those people. And so it's much more about the quality of your audience rather than the size of your audience when you get into B2B and vertical media.
Yeah, and what I think was really interesting about what you're doing, and sort of we've seen this shift from, there was all this free content that's proliferated across the internet, and now everyone is, starting their own Substack, starting their own paid publication. But I think what's cool about what you guys are doing is you're sort of a model on how to scale it. Do you think that it's sort of sustainable with all these people launching their, vertical media companies through Substack? Do you think they can create the scale that you have, or is that not a sustainable trend?
I think Substacks I was talking to a buddy of mine about this. Substack is a great way for individual people to launch, media companies that they want to pay the bills, in my opinion. If you want to start to really build something bigger, I think you need to actually have people. I mean, I think there's only so many Ben Thompsons of the world building Strasheries that are making millions of dollars, and I have mad amounts of respect for what he's done and what he's built, but I don't think there's necessarily thousands of those out there. And so I think it's one of those where I actually really like Substack. I think from a B2B and a vertical media standpoint, it's a great place to start. But if you really start to gain traction, I'd be shocked that you don't want to own the whole process from there. And maybe you wouldn't rely on Substack, but maybe they start to build out, tools that enable you to make even more money. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think all the Substack is it's a great way for individual journalists and individual creators to get started fast and easy, and to really focus on what they do best, which is create. And I think it's brilliant. It's simple. But as somebody that runs a media business that requires people, it only goes so far for most individual creators, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, so we had Harry Campbell, who runs the rideshare blog on the podcast, and his vertical is focused on the gig economy. One of the topics he discussed was, there's sort of these two types of creators: people who are content focused, and then people who are like business entrepreneurial focused. When you're starting out, do you think it's more important to just be a really good content person and be producing tons of content? Or do you think it's more important to be like a business person focusing on, finding the right audience, and content is more secondary to that?
I think you always have to lead with the content, but I'd also preface that with that I think you need a little bit of both to be successful. You need to be good at content, but then you also have to have a certain amount of business sense to be able to monetize it. Where, at the end of the day, everything that we do all starts with the editorial and the content. And I think I was lucky enough when we got started, I was just a one-man band. So that's why I think I feel relatively personally attached to the Substack stuff, because it's like my people, people just like me that got started. But I won't necessarily say I'm a gifted editorial person, but I was good enough to get it started. And so, but then I also think I had the business sense and frankly business need to make a living. Which is kind of how Aging Media got started. But I think you need a little bit of both. I mean, I think the best editorial people, in my opinion, actually understand the business side, because when you marry the editorial side with the business side in the right way, I think you just strike gold. And so I think it's one of those where you really need to focus on both. You need to focus on both to make a living. Like you can't really have one without the other, in my opinion.
Yeah. And, I guess on that note, do you think that, or what do you think drives people, especially in the B2B space, to pay for premium content over, getting it for free? Obviously, the work you're doing, I assume, is fairly difficult to find for free. The New York Times or even smaller publications, right? Like Axios isn't writing deep dives on the aging industry. But what differentiates you guys from, I want to pay for a paid product versus a free product? How do you convince customers to cross that?
So our main product is actually free, and then we have other ways that we monetize through events, through paid research products, through paid webinars, virtual events now with COVID, obviously. But so ours is kind of like top of the funnel. The free content's what gets you hooked, and then we have a lot of services that we then offer to you to monetize you in different ways. So in terms of what makes us unique is that we're really focusing on certain aspects of the market that frankly most people just don't have the resources to do. But once you find these big markets that, in my opinion, each market we get into, we do have competition for the most part. But I would just say that it's competition that I don't think serves their markets well. That typically is just churning out, random B2B shitty press releases that they're rewriting. And so what we found is that when you start to create exclusive content and analysis, which takes a long time and requires a lot of phone calls and requires relationships, that's the kind of stuff that other people can't replicate very easy. And so it makes us almost indispensable to the industries that we cover. And I think that's really where we're trying to go to, where, our motto is exclusive news and analysis that people can't find anywhere else, where really what we're trying to get to is we're trying to become essential in people's lives, where if you're in these industries, it's essential that you read what we put out every day, because not only does it help you feed your families or be able to survive, everybody's talking about what we're writing about. And I think that's one of the things that I love about B2B is that our editorial teams, when these guys go to conferences and when they meet people, it's like they're literally rock stars. And so I think this also comes back to the creator economy, where it's like these people influence massive industries on a daily basis. And so when they see these people and they get mobbed at a conference because they notice their profile pictures and all the articles that they're writing, it's a cool experience. And I think that's been one of my frustrations with just the media and journalism business, that nobody's paying attention to B2B and vertical media because it's not fucking BuzzFeed. It's like, but it's massive industries and people can have a huge influence on people's lives every day. It's just in a different way. And so I don't know, I'll get off my soapbox now, but
And I think at least, you can take from that you guys are making the money while many of these, companies that are focused on consumers like BuzzFeed are in deep financial trouble.
Yeah, like I honestly, I don't know their financial position. It doesn't sound great, but like, I'm not going to say I'm smart. I mean, I wouldn't know how to do that per se. I mean, what we've always, I think when you don't have a lot of money, you have to make wise decisions. And so I think, we made decisions that we wanted to and scale something that was never achievable for us, especially when people were raising a bunch of money. But I think the future of just media in general is going to be vertical and niche, because there can only be so many huge sites, in my opinion. But the rest is open, it's open season.
Yeah, so I guess on that note, how important is free content as a lead generator to convert people to paid? Because I think a lot of, websites I get linked to a lot of Business Insider articles, and they constantly now, like every article seems to be paid. Do you need to tease that free to convert people to paid? Do you see models where it's like exclusively paid and there is no, free content at all? What's the balance there?
I think everybody's doing it different ways. If it was me, I definitely like the idea of having the free stuff to get people hooked. It's like you kind of need like the gateway drug to get them to the good stuff. But it's one of those where I've seen people who have only, have a hard paywall and they don't let you in. But I think that's going to take a longer time to build and be successful. But it's a model and it's worked for people in the past. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's like if you're creating good stuff, you kind of deserve to be paid for it. Now, whether you do that through ads or whether you do that through events or, paid subscriptions in different ways, it's like it takes people to create this stuff and to create the good stuff. And I think you need to be confident enough to charge. To be honest, that's something that we've developed kind of a muscle for over the years where it's scary to, put up a paywall, or it's scary to put a $200 price tag on that report. But at the end of the day, it's like you got to look at it and say, look how much work we put into this. Like people can't recreate this stuff. And so it's one of those where have confidence in what you're building. And as long as it's, in-depth quality and stuff that people can't get elsewhere, it's like you deserve to be paid. It's just a matter of finding out how exactly you can get it. So.
How do you balance the decision between like this is a free content piece versus this is a paid content piece? Do you go into it saying like this is going to be a piece of free content? And I know, and maybe I don't know if you're the expert to talk to about this, but I think for a lot of like smaller folks out there, especially people who are starting Substacks, I know they struggle with like, should this be my free piece? Should this be my paid piece? How to decide which is which.
Yeah, so somebody that doesn't have a Substack, I don't want to be the expert telling them, how to run their Substacks, but I get a lot of them, and so I think people like Jacob, who runs a media operator, does a great job. He has free stuff that he uses to hook you to the paid, but I think there kind of has to be a different hook to get people to pay. And full disclosure, 95% of the content that we produce every day is actually free. So again, we monetize you through different ways, through paid research reports and stuff like that. So it's a different product for us. Now, do I see us rolling out a paywall eventually? And the answer is yes. It's just we're not rushing towards it. Like I feel like everybody's just going towards it right now just because they think it's the new hot thing. And while I do see it as for us, it's always been about diversification. So we're incredibly diversified as a media business. We make money in so many different ways. And I really see the paywall as just one more way to monetize kind of our massive fans, that are reading us, 30 times a month or something like that, where I think they'd be happy to pay. But if somebody's only reading us 5 times a month, I still really want that person. And they're a lot of value to us, but I have to monetize them different ways. So I think, and that's where it comes back to one of your original questions, is it better to be good at content or business? And I think you kind of have to have both in order to think about them, where you have to understand what makes good content, but then at the same time, also understand how you monetize that traffic and that audience.
Yeah, so you talked about monetization and sort of diversifying revenue streams. How important is it for folks to rely on other revenue streams, right? Like, I talked about the attention economy, and one of the things that seems to be a recurring theme is don't be reliant on ads. Ad-supported businesses, especially in vertical media, is not going to work. Can you dive deeper? I know you touched on it, like some of your other revenue streams and why it's important to diversify.
Yeah, so I'm not actually anti-ad. I think people that are anti-ad are anti-revenue, in my opinion, and I don't think that's a good way to build a business. So, I mean, now our display ads, with the 300 by 250 banner, are they gonna solve all the problems? Absolutely not. But if you have that option, get the money. But I think it's one of those where we have a lot of success with like email text ads. So people, simple text ads with a really good call to action they've come back into vogue. And the reason they've come back into vogue is because they work. And so I think it's one of those people always say, ooh, ads are bad, but like not all ads are bad. Like we sell a lot of ads and we make a great living here, doing what we're doing. And I think in terms of diversification, you have to be. I mean, if you look at the last 90 days of COVID and probably for the next year, if you're a primarily events-based media company, you're screwed. And so it's one of those where you have to be diversified and you have to have all these different channels that you can start to go after to monetize to kind of make up for maybe not all the lost revenue, but much less revenue than you would have gotten from in-person events this year.
Yeah, so you touched on like the concept of fandom, but then you also touched on the concept of like events-based businesses, and I actually want to tie the two together. What do you think of like these businesses where they were primarily events media businesses, and now they're like soliciting donations for their businesses? Is that a good model? Is that also like, oh, if you build a business around you have these obsessive fans, they'll donate money to you? Like, does that actually work?
I mean, we've never done anything like donate. We've always just developed products that people have to pay for. But it's one of those, I actually really like events businesses. And I really look at events, and I think our thoughts have kind of changed over the last 24 months on this. But we really look at live events now and going forward, at least for our businesses. It's ways for people to come together and to meet and to connect and network. And again, I think it's one of those where those kind of are our raving fans a little bit, the ones that will pay money to not only attend our event for anywhere from, $300 to $1,000 for a ticket, but then also spend the time, which in our industries is probably the most valuable thing, as well as the hotel, the flight, and all that kind of stuff to really come and meet with people. And that, at the end of the day, if you pull off the event in the right way and people do deals and people can network and people can really form these like great relationships at your event, they're going to come back next year. And so I think it's really one of those that feeds on itself. But I think what COVID's taught us is that you can have that amazing events business, but you need other things around it so you can still connect with them virtually, whether it's through emails, whether it's through, digital events, whether it's through research reports or webinars. I mean, you name it. And I think, we've been really lucky where we've done so much and we've probably tried everything that we're decent at. I don't want to say all of them, but we kind of are. We're decent at all of them. There's some things that we're better at, but it's enabled us to lean on things when other things aren't working. I mean, you just can't have a live in-person event right now. Like, as an entrepreneur, I feel for anybody that had like a major just all live it. Like I feel so bad. But at the same point, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I feel horrible. It's just, it stinks. There's a lot of good business people that got stuck in a really bad place.
Yeah, and I on that note too, right? I think events businesses are great. Like they monopolize people's attention, right? When you go, like all they're thinking is aging media, but at the same time, these event businesses, to your point, you need to have diversification. You need to figure out other ways to connect with people. What advice do you have for folks that we're doing these live events businesses, or people who are considering maybe launching a live event business after this? Like, where are good places to start in terms of building a digital presence on top of that events business?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like we're still looking at launching new events. Now, will we do them next year? Probably not, but never say never. So I still like event businesses as a whole, like in person. But I still we've learned to like virtual events too. But I mean, at the end of the day, all of it comes down to is your audience and building that engaged, community that you're doing. Now, whether that's through Substack, your own media company, however you look at it, but it's like you have to earn every single one of those subscribers. And I think that's one of the things that gets lost a lot when people start to chase scale, is that it just becomes, it's like this paid marketing arbitrage where we've taken a different approach where it's like we earn every subscriber we get. We don't have a paid marketing budget, at least at this point. Something that we should be doing, but it's just, there's a million rabbits right now and we can only chase so many. But I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to your audience and taking care of your audience and making sure that you become an essential part of their day. And that's really, really hard. But the only way you get better at something is by practicing, right? And so, I mean, that's at least how I look at it.
Yeah, and I guess to end it as we wrap things up, one of the things with you guys is that you've sort of moved up market, or maybe not even up market's the right word, but most of your price tags for your customers are higher, while like these Substack businesses are B2C, they're $20 a month. Do you think it's a natural evolution for most of these vertical media companies to move up market, in that if you start in business strategy, you're starting with a regular person, and then 5 years from now your goal is to be selling to like PE or VCs and selling institutional research? Do you think that's a natural evolution for many of these B2B vertical media companies, is to move up market?
Yeah, I mean, I think naturally B2B, since you're not looking to reach as many people, the value of their time, in my opinion, and the time it takes to reach them is higher, and so it costs more. So I think you should be paid more for it. But no, I mean, pricing strategy, it's like one of those, let's be real. Like, I mean, the majority of the time you just throw out a number and hope it works. So I think you just kind of figure that out as you go. But I do think there's a lot of people with Substack and stuff. It's like they're not valuing their time enough, in my opinion. I mean, if you're charging $5 a month, why wouldn't you charge 10? Like, people really get value, but like, there's not that much of a difference. And so I think it's one of those, but if you have 1,000 people and there's a big number there, like that changes things. And so I actually have friends that are looking to start one, and they're like throwing pricing out at me. I'm like, back into the number that you need to leave or to live like the life that you want to live, and then figure out, okay, I need 1,000 people at this price to hit that number. And I feel like that's always a good place to start. At least that's how I'd approach it. It's like, what do I need to live a happy life? And then I try and back into it that way. But I think that first 1,000 people, whether you're doing a Substack or whether you're building a media company, is so hard to do. If you're not just, funneling it with a bunch of paid ads, that once you get to 1,000, I think that's where you start to really see some success.
Yeah, that's a great framework to think about it. But John, really want to thank you for coming on the podcast today. Just for those listening, those watching, can you tell us where can they find you on the internet? Where can they find Aging Media?
Yeah, you can find Aging Media, which was started by me and my brother George, agingmedia.com. And then I'm on Twitter, JRYEDINAK. Feel free to reach out. Thanks.
Great. And the links will be in the show notes and on the YouTube channel. Well, thanks everyone for joining. And until next time, I'll see you then.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.